Mr. Purvis, are you represented by counsel?
No, sir.
You understand you have the right to be represented by counsel?
Oh, yes, sir.
I understand you have the right to have witnesses testify on your behalf.
Yes, sir.
I also understand you have the right to have subpoenas issued on your behalf by the board.
Yes, sir.
And it is your desire to proceed with this matter.
Yes, sir.
May proceed with your restoration argument.
Restoration argument.
Yeah, whatever you have to present before the board.
Okay, what's the, I acknowledge and understand that, you know, what I did was wrong. And I have taken steps to, you know, correct that, address that. I completed over 70 hours of continuing education in the areas that I thought were relevant. It was, you know, documentation, of course, and the ethical decision making. And also, I've been working there at the facility, where I was employed at as a nurse after that issue there, as a maintenance technician. I worked there, I guess, for a little over a year and got to know them, and they thought enough of me to give me a job there to help me out. I had no income or anything. And I have learned, I've been doing maintenance there at that facility to enrich the life of the residents there. You know, I'm more of a multi-talented, I'm an RN that can do more than just, you know, medicine and IVs and, you know, labs and stuff like that. I actually help out with the life safety at the building there. They have like the federal codes that deal with life safety. I understand about that now, and I help them. You know, I plan on continuing to help them. I actually plan on, you know, working there at the facility. If my license is restored, plan on working at that same facility. And, you know, I'll be a better overall nurse. I mean, those people, they know I'm a good nurse. I mean, I have a good heart. I made a mistake. I mean, I know there's a nursing shortage, and I'm ready to get back into it. I mean, I feel I have made necessary corrections. I know I screwed up bad. And I was, you know, if you make a mistake, all you can do is, you know, own up to it and admit it and try to make right by it. And that is what I have done. I did every single class that on the Board of Nursing's website that I could, that was possible, that was related to my situation. I didn't have, I mean, I had to work, so I couldn't, there was a class or two that was, you know, where you could sit in the classroom and do it. I didn't have the resources to do that, but I did all of the available continuing education, you know, that I could on this subject. And I have, believe me, I've had a year to sit and reflect on this whole situation. And I mean, I lost my house, I lost a truck, I almost lost my wife over this whole thing. I mean, I know it's the biggest mistake I ever made. I mean, and this is something that, I mean, I'll never, ever do again. I mean, I know where I went wrong. I mean, I don't want to, you know, take too much time and like almost 2 years ago, I don't remember every single detail that night, but I was pushed into a corner to be a charge nurse. I didn't really want to, but I didn't want to tell them no. I was brand new, didn't want to disappoint them. And I made a decision. I was trying to cut a corner, and it cost everybody. It cost me and them, embarrassed me and them. And I mean, I regret it to this day more than anything. There's nothing. I mean, it has affected me so much in every way that I could possibly imagine, that there's nothing that I could there. You certainly would never have to worry about me. I would second guess anytime I go to make a decision. If it doesn't, you know, affect the people I'm, you know, the stakeholders of that decision, if it doesn't affect them in a good way, I'm just not going to do it. I'll call and ask for advice. That's my big problem. I don't like to call and ask for advice. I try to be the one that can just handle it on its own. But I've learned to, in this case, if had I done that night, I wouldn't be here today. I would still be working probably. So that's, and if there's any kind of, I know y'all, I don't know how y'all do it, but I know there's some monitoring and some evaluation and some supervision. I have been audited. I know by the Pillars of Biloxi is where I'm working. When I worked for them, I know I was audited on my nurse notes. So that one of the supervisors told me that. I mean, and this is the only place this incident has ever occurred. I worked since 2012 as a nurse. I never had anything like this. It was this one situation that was new to me. Everybody thought it would be a good fit for me. It was a horrible fit for me. The jail was, and if I will never do correctional nursing again. That was it was the biggest mistake of my life. And if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have never took the job. I know that I'm a good nurse and that this kind of error will never happen. I'll if I don't know what to do, I'll just call somebody instead of, and it don't matter if it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll call and wake them up. Had I known that that this was an issue like the hearing, I would have come up here. I apologize for not coming the first time. I literally didn't know. I'm nervous. I don't really know what else to say.
Let me ask you, Mr. Burgess.
Yes.
What is your current address?
It's actually 1211 Arbor View Circle. I moved this past month from one apartment in that complex, is 217 Arbor View Circle, to a bigger apartment in that same complex, 1211 Arbor View, and I did update that on Nurse Sis, or on the Gateway.
In Brookhaven?
No, sir. That's down here in D'Iberville. That was the big problem. I moved from Brookhaven to D'Iberville with no change of address.
Did you have anything else you want to share with us?
The nurse, the administrator, and the director of nurses where I work now as a maintenance tech, thought enough of me to give me that job. They're trying to help me out. They know I'm a good nurse. And I wish I didn't think about the letters of recommendation. I only had one. I asked her for it. I didn't know that I should get more. I could have gotten more. I could have got one from a former director of nurses before this incident, and then even, I got one from after. I could have had, first time I ever did this. I didn't have my ducks in a row as good as I could have. I did do everything I thought, but I didn't realize. It looks like you can, I guess 3 would have been the optimal number of letters of recommendation. And I could have had them. I just didn't think to do that. But the public, I have a history in law enforcement. I do understand about protecting the public. And I know y'all's main concern is to look out for the public. I mean, going from policing to, that's why they thought I was a good fit to this job, was because I had a veteran patrol officer and a nurse. They said, you're perfect for it. It turned out to be the exact opposite. I mean, it was a disaster. And that's why this one situation was so bad for me to go into. And I should have just stepped up to him and said, I don't want to do the charge, nurse. It was the very first charge night that I did this. And I should have just stepped up and told him, well, I don't want to do this. I'm not ready for it. I barely understand the jail schedule or my job, let alone everybody else's job. And I was trying to make an impression on them, and it all turned out, it backfired big time. And put the people's, in jeopardy. And I put the people in jeopardy. I put their contract in jeopardy. I mean, it's all me. And I'm regretfully sorry for all that. And embarrassing the state even, as a registered nurse. And if I'm given that position again, I mean, there's no way. I'm 51 years old. I'm not going to do it twice. I'm not gonna mess up twice.
Okay, we're at the point now where council will be able to ask some questions. If any of the board panel members have any questions for you, they can as well. We'll start with council.
Sure. Let's establish, Mr. Purvis, your address and timelines, okay?
Yes.
So tell us your current mailing address, the whole thing.
The current address is 1211 Harborview Circle, D'Iberville, Mississippi, 39540.
And how long have you lived in that residence?
About 2 weeks now.
Okay, all right. And prior to that, what was your mailing address?
It was 217 Harborview Circle in that same
And,
complex.
and that's the address that your restoration application was based upon, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. And how long have you lived there?
In Harborview, we've lived there. We first moved down here. We moved to Seymour Avenue in D'Iberville, to a rental house.
Hmm.
And that turned into a house that we were in the process of buying. And then I lost my license, everything, that sale fell apart. And then I had to move to that apartment.
Right.
But before that, it was the Brookhaven address that y'all have on file or did have on file.
So give us the Brookhaven address, you did reside at 423 West Minnesota Street in Brookhaven.
Yes, ma'am.
And how long did you live at that address?
That was the whole 2 years. I moved back to Brookhaven to go back to work out there for the city. It was the whole time. It was
Okay,
from 2017 to 2019, like I'll
okay,
say September of 2017 to like August of 2019. We
okay,
moved down here.
okay. So summertime of August 2017, August, give or take, you've been in the Iberville since August of 2017.
No, 2019.
2019, okay. 2019, August of 2019. Okay.
Yes,
Just wanted to get that timeline down. And so when this incident occurred at the Harrison jail, where were you living then?
we lived at the Seymour Avenue address. It was 10437 Seymour Avenue
Okay,
in D'Iberville.
okay. And so basically, when you decided to take the job on the coast, you did not at that time go into the gateway and change your address. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. And you're an RN, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So you renew every 2 years, and of course, you didn't have that chance to renew in 2020 because the
Right.
board decided to revoke your license in June. Is that give or take about the time?
Yes,
Even
ma'am.
though the order came later?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so at that time, you didn't go in to change your address upon renewal, and then you didn't have the chance to, fair enough.
Yes, ma'am.
And then prior to that, you didn't go in to independently change your address just because you had moved.
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Okay.
I neglected to do that.
Okay, so when you're looking at exhibits B6A, and those were the exhibits admitted at your June 2020 hearing, you would note with me then that on B5, and again, we're not here to argue these exhibits, but just for the point of the record, that last exhibit of B5, and I'll wait till you get there, it's that last page.
Is it, wait a minute, is
It's
this,
it's gonna be, actually, it's gonna be exhibit B6A.
oh,
That, I think they're all in the paper clip. I tried to,
okay, well,
and then within B6A, go to exhibit B5. It's kind of
all
confusing.
right, okay.
Yeah.
Mm, shoot.
Let's go to that first page, actually, of B5, within 6A.
Okay, wait a minute, I see now. Okay, I got a
They
B6.
were, what, yeah.
Well, I've got a B6 and a B7. I don't have a.
Well,
It's okay.
on your B6A, you have within that a B5 at the bottom. You should.
B3. Here it is. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
okay. All right, no worries.
Sorry.
It's kind of confusing. But do you agree with me then on that particular exhibit page that's marked B5 within B6A? It says March 17, 2020, and it has the address, the Brookhaven address, the 423 West Minnesota Street.
Yes, ma'am, I see.
Would you be willing to at least admit that that is the address that the Board of Nursing had on record and on the file with your license at that time of March of 2020?
Yes, ma'am. That's it. This is the actual letter y'all sent, apparently. Yep.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And so you testified that you had moved to the Iberville August of 2019, right?
Right.
But you're willing to testify and admit that on March 17, 2020, that Brookhaven address was the address on file with the Board of Nursing.
Right. I mean, that is, I mean, it was, wasn't it August? Well, it was maybe July. It could have been July when we moved down here, you know, July or August.
I think you're missing my point. I'm just saying that the address you see here, the Brookhaven address you see here on this exhibit,
Yes, ma'am.
it remained the address attached to your license. Would you agree with me?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes.
Got it. Okay. All right. Now look at that last page, Mr. Purvis. When I say last page, what I mean is, you see where it says Exhibit B5 within 6A, it's kind of confusing. That last page,
Okay.
Yep.
This one right here?
that's right.
Yes, ma'am.
And would you agree with me that this page I'm referring to is a copy of an envelope that looks like it's been returned to the Board of Nursing?
Yes, ma'am. I see that. It's unable to forward. no
Right.
mail.
Right. You see that tracking number above your name?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. If you go back to that page we just were talking about, those tracking numbers match.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they do. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so ultimately, for your hearing in June 2020, Mr. Purvis, what the board had to do was to show proof of publication. And again, your testimony is that you never updated the system. So the only address that was attached to your license at the time of your hearing would have been that 423 Minnesota address of Brookhaven.
Yes, ma'am.
So then you see that the way the board was able to move forward with your case was that they published in the newspaper within Lincoln County, which is the county of the city of Brookhaven. Would you
Right.
agree?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Okay, all right. All right, so now that we have your address confirmed and your understanding that that address was attached to the license, let's get down to why the board decided to revoke your license, Mr. Purvis. You did testify that you were a new charge nurse, maybe the first time you were a charge nurse while at that facility. Is that your testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I think honestly, at the heart of this, would you agree that, you know, you learned in nursing school to focus on documentation? Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And would you understand that, you know, again, the board, having heard your testimony, just wants to make sure that, you know, your decision not to actually assess those patients, and then your decision to falsely document that you had, could raise an eyebrow about your nursing practice.
Oh, yeah. I understand.
And would you agree with me that nursing in general puts you in a light of a public trust?
Yes.
Yes. And that, you know, when you are assigned a patient, that 100% of what you are to be with that patient is document all that's going on with that patient. Would you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So it's your testimony then that you understand the basis of the importance of documentation.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And what you've done today is show the board that you're rehabilitating by all the classes and courses that you've taken.
Absolutely.
And I believe your testimony was you have over 80 hours,
Well,
70 hours.
close to 70.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
about 70 hours.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, all right. You did submit a complete restoration application,
I did.
and you answered all of the questions in this application, including attaching affidavits that spoke on your behalf.
I did.
Okay, let's just briefly go over those. You are required to have at least 5, and I believe you submitted more than that.
I did.
And is it your testimony today that all of the affiants that completed the affidavit, they understand what happened and how you lost your license?
They do. I had to tell all of them the ugly, cold, hard truth. They knew.
Okay,
They know.
and they submitted them on your behalf.
They did. They did. They still did it. Just I didn't threaten them. I didn't coerce them. They did it.
And I believe you had, just again, not to beat the horse, but just for the record purposes, you had a affidavit from a Dr. Hoover.
Hoover. Yes, ma'am.
Can you just state briefly the nature of how you know Dr. Hoover?
Dr. Hoover is the medical director of the Pillars of Biloxi. And, from the beginning, when I first met him, we just, I don't know, we hit it off. I have immense respect for this man. He's not just you have a doctor, you have a regular doctor, an MD, then you have like a DO. And I can't remember what DO exactly stands for right now, but they have to do additional training. It's like an additional 400 hours worth of pressure points, hands-on techniques to heal a patient through touch, like clinical touch. Or I don't know exactly what it is, but they go above and beyond a regular doctor, and he's old school, and we work great together. I love him. He loves me. I mean, he's kept me going through this. He's like, he's encouraged me. He wants me to come back, and he was good enough to do this for me. So, I'm going to go back there and work with him. If y'all let me have it back, I'm going to go back and work with him.
Okay.
Mainly because he's there, but I mean, the rest of them too, Sheila's gone. Sheila Holland is gone. She was like my mom there. I'm sorry. I'm getting
This is good. Just a brief, just tell us briefly. And Jessica Jewell, what's your affiliation with Jessica?
Well, Jessica was at first, she was a hospice nurse that came in and out of the facility. And I associated with her a little bit that way, but later they hired her. There at the facility as a full-time nurse. And then they elevated her to the director of nurses. And she said, she's the one that told me, she said, I'll help you, if you want to, come back, I can do, I can help you do the board of nursing stuff. She said, I know for a fact that your medical documentation has been audited since you were here working as a nurse. And she said, I know you're a good nurse. She said, I'll do all that. The stuff that y'all have them, I don't know what exactly y'all have them do, but y'all have them do something. She said she would do that.
And Ms. King, how do you know Ms. King?
Ms. King is, she was my supervisor on the rehab unit there. We have like a tertiary care unit where people come from hospitals and different places after they've had surgery for physical therapy and rehab. And we do the rehabilitative nursing while they're going through therapy. And she was the supervisor there. And that's how I know her.
And Ms. Germain?
Who?
Peggy Germain?
Let me get to that one. I didn't hear the name quite. Who was it again? Wait a minute. Hold on.
LPN, is it German?
Oh, Peggy Germain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Peggy we worked together just on the cart.
Okay.
She actually was TCU manager, but it was after the fact when I was gone. But I worked with her on the cart.
So all red?
Angel's another one I worked on the cart with.
All right. And Joseph Scalia?
He's the actual physical therapy, the actual doctorate or PhD physical therapist there. He's not the manager of the PT unit, but he's the real therapist. Like the PhD guy.
And Tina Sherman?
And she's a social worker there at the facility that's been there a long, long time. I know her brother. I got to know her brother down here. He does mechanic work, and I've had a car that's broke down several times. I took care of me, but I've known her through interactions with the patients and trying to get things for patients like wheelchairs and different things. Worked with her on stuff, so she was willing to do this.
Okay, and then Mary Cook.
Mary is another RN that worked with me on the rehab. She's no longer there. She works at Garden Park.
And if the board panel just decided on a whim to call up any one of these individuals, would they all endorse you?
Yeah, they should. Yes, ma'am. I don't. Their phone number could have changed or something, but they would. I can get their array if they didn't.
Part G of your application talks about the rehabilitation, and you mentioned this about the continuing hours, and we've covered that component of it. But just honestly, finally, Mr. Purvis, I believe we've covered most everything else. But have you learned your lesson?
Yes, ma'am. I have. It's been a long, hard year, a little over a year of, I'm going hungry and going, I lost everything. I mean, my wife's, I'm lucky she's still with me. Yes, I have. Very
And,
much.
and the facility that you're currently employed, is your testimony that they are wanting to employ you as a nurse if the board
Yeah.
decides? to
She
employ you?
told me to call her. If you give me a decision today, she wants me to call her, because she's ready to put me on the schedule right now. Sheila Backtail.
Sheila, okay.
She actually wrote the letter of recommendation. There's one in there on the
And I
front.
believe it's in the very beginning, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That the board panel can make note of. Okay, all right. This time the state has no further questions.
Any questions for Mr. Purvis from the board panel? Well, at this time, Mr. Purvis, if you have a council, do you have any? Well, at this time, Mr. Purvis, if you have a closing statement, you may make.
Any evaluation or any probation or anything that I can, be under to get my license back, I'll do anything. I mean, if you, the monthly evaluations, any kind of drug screens, I don't have the drug problem, but I don't have a problem doing that. I just need my, I need my life back. I'll do anything to get it back. And this is not going to happen again. I'm not going to embarrass myself or the board of nursing like this again. I don't want to see my name in print again, not like this. I promise you that.
Honestly, this is a classic case of negligence, mainly negligence on not updating profile information. This case would not have been a case had he appeared that the panel would have revoked his license. Certainly there's negligence involved about documentation. He's admitted to that. Certainly you don't want anyone coming before the panel saying it's okay not to document an assessment. But clearly in this matter, this is a case where he failed to update his information and it cost him his livelihood. The state would just ask or just state to the panel that he does have a complete restoration before you. He has gone above and beyond with the affidavits presented before you, and just the panel should deliberate and decide whatever it is you would like to do with Mr. Purvis, whether it be restoring him or restoring him with conditions in light of the burden he carries.
I'll make a motion that we go into closed termination session to see if it-
Moved and properly seconded. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's entertain a motion for the board to exit to executive session for deliberation on license number R891455.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The board will now exit to session. We will return with a decision in this matter shortly. right, thank you. We are back on the record. Entertain a motion for the board panel to return to regular session. It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The board panel is now back in regular session. Following deliberation on license number R891455, the board panel renders the following: reinstatement with no restrictions. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Unless you have anything further, you may be excused.
The administrator wanted me to ask you, do you have an idea on the time frame before they can employ me as a nurse?
Well, now, we typically try to get the orders out in 30 to 60 days.
Mhm.
Now, it's my understanding that they usually want to have that order in hand.
Right.
Now, I don't know if them being made aware of what the order is will be enough for them, but usually they'll want to have that order.
Okay.
So we will try to get it out quickly, but that's kind of the time frame we operate within.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you all.
sure.
Appreciate it. Do well. Do well. I'm gonna do well. I don't want to see y'all again.
Hey, can y'all see me? I'm sorry. We can hear you.
Ms. Jones,
Okay.
can see you. Yes, yes.
All right, good afternoon. The next matter before the board panel, license number R 890-130, R 901-511, NP. Is the licensee present?
I am.
Council, do we have any preliminary matters on this one?
Yes, we do need to admit exhibits, swear in witnesses with regard to the virtual component. So first up, the state will then move that exhibits B1 through B12 as well as R1 be admitted into the record.
Ms. Jones, do you have any objection to those exhibits?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll ask that we have our witnesses sworn in remotely.
Uh-huh.
Will you raise your right hand once we're again, please?
Yes.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're going to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, are you represented by counsel?
No, sir, not today.
Okay, you understand you have the right to be represented by counsel?
Yes.
You also understand you have the right to present witnesses on your behalf?
Yes.
You also understand that you have the right to have subpoenas issued on your behalf by the board,
Yes.
and you are ready to proceed with this matter virtually.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Did you have anything else preliminarily, counsel?
Nothing.
We will begin with opening statements. Then we will have the argument from the petitioner. We will allow for questions from counsel as well as the board panel. Once we've heard from both sides, the board panel will have an opportunity to deliberate over findings of fact and conclusions of law, and then render its decision. I will note for the record that these hearings are open to the public, and the board may deliberate and make its decision in executive session. At this time, Ms. Jones, if you have an opening statement, you may make it.
Okay. First of all, I just want to thank y'all for, 2 years ago, restore my license. I feel like the last 2 years, of course, in nursing has been a trying time, and I've been really happy to be part of that. I just want to say that I, to my best ability, have done everything that I know that was asked of me in the last 2 years in order to proceed with having stipulations removed. And I hope that I can have the opportunity to do that today and continue on with this next part of this journey.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jones. Counsel?
We are here today on Ms. Jones' petition. My understanding is Ms. Jones is requesting that this board remove stipulations from her NP and RN license. The matter before the panel does include a final order dated July 2nd, 2019 that outlines the stipulations of Ms. Jones. The panel should consider evidence and testimony today in this hearing in light of the burden that Ms. Jones carries to show why the board should consider such.
All right, thank you, counsel. At this time, Ms. Jones, could you just verify your current address for me?
It's 204 Fairfield Drive, Starkville, Mississippi. 3971.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
You may begin with your presentation in support of your petition.
Like I say, as far as the requirements, I know there are exhibits that were entered as far as compliance. I feel the main points of all the things of, that make up staying sober and staying clean, and in order to, stay in the nurse recovery program, I have done. I think all that evidence is in those exhibits. I feel that I have, like I say, met every requirement. I was very careful to, if any changes were made, to promptly inform the board of those. I've read, and tried to make sure that I know there's so much that goes along with it. So I genuinely, if anything was overlooked or not completely exact, it was not that I didn't do my best in trying to have it all done the way that y'all have asked me to do it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jones. Do you have any questions for Ms. Jones, counsel?
I do. Good afternoon, Ms. Jones. How are you?
Hey, I'm good.
Okay, good. I do want to focus right now. I don't know if you have it in front of you. I think you're working, maybe on a break, right?
I
there you
am.
are. Sure. But I want to reference Exhibit B7. Exhibit B7 is the final order that was signed July 2nd, 2019 by our executive director. Ms. Phyllis Johnson, do you have B7 available or where you can access it? All right, as we look at Exhibit B7, would you agree with me? You did come before the panel in a restoration hearing, April 25th, 2019.
Yes,
And in that hearing, the board saw fit to provide or allow you a license, but conditioning that license with some stipulations. Would you agree with me?
yes,
Okay. And the board also stated with reference to your NP license, right? Your advanced practice license, that you were only allowed to prescribe non-controlled medications for a minimum of 24 months due to your controlled substance authority being suspended for you. Would you agree with me on that?
yes,
Okay. And the actual order itself basically states that you are to complete all the stipulations in 60 months. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So just want to make sure for clarification, because your request had asked that the board consider both the APRN and RN stipulations be removed. But are you only asking for the controlled substance prescriptive authority today?
There were a couple of different points in there related to the 24 months. That was one, that the prescription authority be reinstated. The other was in regard to the indirect supervision.
Right.
Also something that fell under that same category. I think different areas being able to practice in. It's paragraph 4 is what I'm looking at.
Absolutely.
And then, yes, so those are the two things that I was asking for. I didn't know if there was any option of the probation being shortened from the 5 years or not, but I do understand that that is the initial order.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure we're on the same page, at least with regard to how the order reads, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. And I want to pause there because this order is important, but I do want to also point out while we're talking about the controlled substance privilege, that Exhibit B11 actually evidences that you have not written any controlled substance during the time you've been under the order, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And so you have complied with that provision. Let's look at paragraph 4, the indirect supervision, because obviously you met all preconditions found on page 3 of 10 and then 4 of 10 to receive a probated license, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's look at that paragraph 4. In that paragraph 4, it says that you, under the first 24 months of the probated period, you should work under an APRN or an RN if you're working as an RN who's on the premises. And that supervisor should have the minimum of 2 years. Is it your testimony that you've been doing that?
Yes.
Have you been working as an RN or have you been working as an APRN underneath that paragraph 4 provision?
An RN. I have not worked as an MP since then.
Okay. All right. And where are you currently working?
North Mississippi Medical Center in West Point.
Okay. And who is your indirect supervisor?
Will Mitchell.
And it is your testimony that you have complied with all the quarterly reports and notifications that were required of you of the order, and you've submitted those to the board, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The second part of paragraph 4, and forgive me, I know I'm jumping around, but I'm trying to cover it efficiently. Paragraph 4 within the indirect supervision, that second half, just talks about that you should not be self-employed or employed by a nurse registry, temporary nurse, employment agency, hospice, or home health. Would you agree?
Correct.
right? And you've not done that, right?
Yes, ma'am. I have not.
Okay. Okay. It also says that multiple employers are prohibited. And you have not been employed by more than one employer while you have nursed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, that paragraph 4 just states that you may petition for removal from the indirect supervision, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's part of what you're doing here today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. As we move forward in the order, on page 6, you've testified regarding employer reports and quarterly reports, and certainly the compliance. If there were issue, then there would be evidence to suggest you had not done that, but you have done that. Aftercare and counseling treatment. Can you tell the board, have you been compliant with those paragraphs and what's required of you?
I have.
Okay. And do you still see your counselor regularly?
I don't. She actually wrote or typed up a letter and had faxed it to my compliance officer at the time saying just to change from monthly to as needed.
Very good. And on page 7 of your order, it talks about the drug screens. And is it your testimony that you have been actively submitting specimens when called and then calling in pretty much daily?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to pause there because there was a huge document that was sent to you via email with, I believe it had 147 pages. And that's
Yes,
going to
ma'am.
be your spectrum report, right? Okay.
Yeah.
On that front page of Exhibit B12, you would agree with me then that you've checked in 797 times.
Yes, ma'am.
It says here you've missed 10, but you've not missed any screens when you were called to submit a drug screen, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You've had 38 negative screens, is that correct?
Yes.
And then you had 2 value out of range, is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe you submitted some documentation about 1 or 2 of those tests being out of range. Can you explain that to the board, those circumstances?
Yes, ma'am. First, I guess just the missed check. And so that was when I was newly in the program that fall of 19. Long story short, there is an email exchange where it was a legitimate miscommunication on my part. I was out of the country. They put in a leave of absence, I guess it's called. And so for 6 days that I was gone, I did not check in. When I came back, I was called to do actually a 12 panel hair follicle test, which was negative that I did after that. But anyway, so of those 10, 6 were that time. I've had 4 other ones. The 2 values out of range. The first, I spoke to I can't remember the term, the medical officer. I think his name was Dr. Lubin.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And I saw he made a notation in here, but I guess he didn't note everything in our conversation. I explained that I actually was training for a half marathon and was drinking literally liters of water. So I guess it appeared the urine was dilute. I explained that to him and he said, yes, that could cause it. And we reviewed, try not to drink a lot of water before these tests and whatnot. Again, I'm a runner. I drink too much water. So I try to about have myself dehydrated when I do these tests. But apparently one other one was also came back as the creatinine was low. So it was considered dilute.
But he did not rule those, after that discussion, he did not rule those screens as a positive, right?
Correct. He did not.
Okay. All right. And as she does note, Ms. Jones, as you did note, there are notes as referenced, the one for, I believe, 12/16, 2019 value out of range. That note for the record is located on page 138 of 147. There's notation in there by Dr. Lupin, MRO. Medical review officer who did look at that screen, the one that Ms. Jones did reference, and as well, if I may have a point of preference here to let you know about the other one. Wait a second. Just passed it, sorry. 1 second. And then finally, Ms. Jones, I found it now. I believe that that second notation of value out of range is going to be found first on 47 of 147 as the point of reference there, where that's indicated where you tested. Is that correct? I don't know if you're able to look with me.
Yes, that's right. And I actually recall on that, I don't think it's in any of this, but I was sent a letter of concern that I signed and got back to Natil, my compliance officer, on that.
Yep. Okay. So that explains then your 2 drug screens. Now, you have been, you've not been working as an APRN since when?
Since I surrendered my license, I haven't pursued or taken a job as one since then.
And that would be 2017, about when you surrendered?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, so understandably, with your order, you have been in compliance with the stipulations, but you're asking the panel now for your controlled substance prescriptive authority be restored to you. And it's been about 5 years. Would you agree? Or 4? Let's say
Yes.
4. Okay, 4.
Mhm.
Do you have any job prospects? Is there anyone that you've talked to that's willing to be a mentor? I mean, have you sort of pursued that as a line of work?
Honestly, I haven't right now. I kind of wanted to get all this back in order before I pursued anything. I'm loving being a nurse right now. I'm actually on a COVID unit. I'm really enjoying it, and I honestly just love being a nurse. So I feel like when the time is right, I'll begin looking and talking to people again about it.
So you would note then if the panel considered you being in compliance, again, working as an RN, if they consider the possibility of allowing you to prescribe, you would understand then their concern, and there may be a need to protect you, to still require perhaps deploy reports, some drug screening, something again to let them know that you're safe.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because there's also something in the Nurse Practice Act that I'm not sure you're aware of, that any nurse that's been out of practice, and I say that because I know you've not been technically out of practice as you are an RN, but being out of practice as an APRN, if you're over 5 years, there may be a need for some refresher classes.
Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I feel that way already.
Okay, and so your testimony is then you're just trying to be in compliance with the order. Should the board allow you to have more things removed of you within that 24 months, that's really what you're wanting to do. At least it's a good step in the right direction for you.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, and as of now, you are gainfully employed with North Mississippi West Point, in West Point, Mississippi, right?
Yes.
With every intention to stay?
Yes.
Okay. This time, the state has no further questions.
Are there any questions from the board panel for Ms. Jones?
B11, which is the PMP and prescriber profile.
Mhm.
One on B10, it has 1 prescription listed under there. It doesn't really say what it is, but on B11 it has 0. So can that be?
Yes. The B10 is her personal PMP. B11 is the prescribing profile, which means if she were writing controlled substances, which she's not. Like
You know what
B10,
that medicine is, though?
B10, you can ask that question. You can
I
ask
just didn't see the name of the medicine. It says that there's 1 medicine on your profile in B10, but I don't.
Yes, I saw that, and actually it appears it was,
Epinephrine?
I'm sorry if I'm speaking over somebody I can't hear. It appears it was from March of 19, and I think it was like Claritin D maybe, which was before all this hearing and stuff. I don't know, wherever that time frame that was selected to pull them went back to like 18, I think. So that fell on it, but it was not since my hearing with y'all the first time.
You haven't taken any other medicine since the order?
No, correct.
I guess my only other question, Brett, maybe for you, maybe just for my clarification, I'm looking at 2 license numbers.
Yes,
Can you?
I can.
Okay.
So we issue one number for the RN and then one number for the APRN. And that helps because sometimes, like, for example, if the board wanted to discipline just the APRN, then the RN can be unencumbered. I mean, meaning it wouldn't be disciplined, or if they want to discipline both. And a lot of that is because of data reporting. We had an issue when we report into nurses. And when we have the same number that's connected to all these privileges, like RN, APRN, non-controlled prescriptive authority, it just gets confusing. It's mainly for reporting than it is anything else. That helps.
Trying to figure it out, 'cause mine is mine. I don't have 2 different numbers, so it's just
We started doing that in the last, because of the reporting issues.
got it.
Yeah.
So does the RN end in 130?
Yes. Yes, and in fact, on exhibit B2, that's that's directly from the database. And Ms. Jones, we're just talking about your licenses. The board just wanted to clarify that you have 2 different numbers. And I was just explaining to them that there are 2 different ones. One is for your registered nurse, the 890-130, and then the MP number is 901-511.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
And the only one that has restrictions
Hmm.
is
They both do right now.
The order just states the MP, but the order in the body of it talks about the RN.
Okay. All right. Just needed-
Question. It's a good question.
I was confused.
So just as a point of clarity, Ms. Jones is asking the board panel to lift control, prescriptive authority, as well as indirect supervision.
Right. Basically reinstate her ability to apply for that controlled substance authority
Okay.
and remove the indirect supervision.
Okay.
Ask one more question.
Mhm.
Ms. Jones, you still have an active DEA number? Like nothing happened from the DEA perspective of the federal level. Is that correct?
No, I don't know the details of all that. I know, I don't know how y'all work hand in hand with them. I surrendered that as well in 2017 when I spoke with Mr. Floyd and also the DA agent. She asked me that day to surrender it, which I did. I'm not sure of the details of still having a number and whatnot, but maybe it's just been active or something. I don't.
Right. And the DEA would need permission from the Board of Nursing saying that you're eligible. I think it's all about eligibility. And
Okay.
that's the key for the board.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, so many questions.
Anything further from the board panel? Do you have anything further, counsel?
Nothing further.
Ms. Jones, if you have a closing statement, you may make it at this time.
I just appreciate y'all's time and letting me have this opportunity, and I appreciate any grace and whatnot you can shed on this situation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Counsel?
The state would just offer that the exhibits here today in her testimony, Ms. Jones does carry the burden. Basically, Ms. Jones is asking for 2 provisions be examined within her order. One, to allow her to have her controlled substance prescriptive authority, her eligibility back. And then secondly, that the indirect supervision component be removed as a condition for her to continue working under the order. The state would advise, however, since it has been a while since Ms. Jones has practiced as an APRN, it might be prudent for the panel to still consider requiring employer reports and drug screening just as an additional protection. That certainly would be up to the panel.
Ms. Jones,
Yes, sir.
if the board panel were to recommend additional education, would you have a problem with that?
No, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, at this time, I would like to make a motion. We go into closed determination session to see if executive session is needed.
I'll second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Now entertain a motion for the board panel to exit to executive session for deliberation on license number R 890-130 and license number R 901-511 NP.
Make a motion, we go into executive session for deliberations on stated license numbers.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The board will now exit to executive session. Ms. Jones, you may remain on until we return with a decision in this matter.
Okay.
Right, thank you everyone for your patience. We are back on the record. We'll entertain a motion for the board to return to regular session.
Make a motion, we return to regular session.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The board panel is now back in regular session. Following deliberation on license number R890130 and R901511NP, the board panel renders the following. Indirect supervision is removed. Control prescriptive authority is denied. The board panel recommends the Board of Nursing APRN orientation. A copy of this order will be forwarded to the licensee within 30 to 45 days. Barring any questions, Ms. Jones, you are excused.
So do I petition for that again, or how does that work?
You are actually still under the order from 2019. So the short answer to your question is yes, once the stipulations for those or for that order have been met. Basically, what we've done is remove the indirect supervision. Everything else within the order from 2019 remains in place.
Okay, so my DEA can't be reinstated until after the 5 years? I'm trying to understand, or eligible?
Once you have completed the remainder of the time frame that the original order indicated, you can petition the board for removal of any stipulations that remain.
Okay.
Jones? Can you hear me?
I do.
Okay, I think Mr. Wiggins announced what the board ordered today, right? But when he said, when the board decided to deny the controlled substance eligibility, but recommended the orientation for the Board of Nursing APRN orientation, that all stems from you not working as an APRN since 2017, right?
Okay.
So keep in mind this: if you take away the indirect supervision, which is what the board did, should you decide to get a job as an NP, that order allows you to do so. You can work as an NP with everything, as Mr. Wiggins said, with the order controlling. And if you want the controlled substance piece back, the board here today is just recommending that you go and get the APRN orientation course, and that you are eligible to request that be granted you. Does that make sense? Your order is kind of a different order. That's why it's a little bit difficult to follow. But they're not saying that you have to work under supervision. What they are saying is they are not going to grant you at this time the eligibility for your controlled substance back, but they want you to attend the Board of Nursing APRN orientation. If you go out and get a job as an NP, there is nothing in that order that should prohibit you from doing so. And should you obtain employment as an APRN and you've taken the Board of Nursing orientation class, then by all means, the board wants you to apply to obtain eligibility for your controlled substance.
I guess I'm not understanding, if it's denied, how can I still do that? I'm just confused.
Well, you can work as an APRN without the controlled substance prescriptive authority privilege.
Right, I understand. I mean, Yes, I understand that I could have done that for the last 2 years also.
Right.
At what point, so I'm hearing two different things. It's saying I'm denied to be eligible for it, but then I'm hearing you say that after I take the course that I would be eligible for it. Is that
They're just denying
right?
your request today because the order just said minimum. The order said a minimum of 24 months. You could petition to request that privilege back.
Okay.
So
So
the board is
after
just,
that,
yes, yes.
after I attend that, I could petition to request it again.
That is what they're saying, but
Okay,
listening,
okay.
but yes, that's what they're saying.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yes. Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jones. You may be excused.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Following deliberation on license number R 890 130 and R 901 511.
All right, good afternoon. The next matter before the board panel, license number R865267. This is also a petition. Understand the licensee is here in person.
Yes, sir.
At this time, I'll ask that the licensee be sworn.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any preliminary matters, council?
do. We do have two matters. The first matter is there is an additional exhibit that I would like to have marked as B11, which is the compliance summary. Ms. Taylor has received a copy of that. And then once we have that marked, I would then move that exhibits B1 through B11 be entered into the record in this matter.
Ms. Taylor, do you have any objection to those exhibits?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. They will be admitted. Council,
At this time, would the panel care for opening statements or?
momentarily.
Sure.
Ms. Taylor, you're not represented by council today?
No, sir.
You understand you have the right to be represented by council? You understand you have the right to have witnesses presented on your behalf?
Yes.
You also understand you have the right to have subpoenas issued on your behalf by the board.
Can you repeat the last thing?
You have the right to have subpoenas issued on your behalf by the board.
Yes.
And you desire to proceed with this matter today.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We will proceed as follows. We will have opening statements. Then we will hear from both sides regarding their presentations to the board. We will have an opportunity for the licensee to be questioned by the board panel. Once we've had the presentation of both sides, the board will make findings of fact and conclusions of law and will render its decision. A copy of that decision will be forwarded within 30 to 45 days to the licensee. I will note for the record that these hearings are open to the public. At this time, we will begin with opening statements. And Ms. Taylor, you may make one if you have one.
I just want to, a simple thank you is not enough for the gratitude I have for everything that's occurred, and just immense, like I said, gratitude for this experience that I've gone through. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Thank you, council.
We are here today on the petition of Ms. Taylor. Ms. Taylor is petitioning this board asking that all stipulations be removed from her registered nurse license. There is an order that was entered by the board November 20th, 2017. In that order, it conditioned Ms. Taylor's RN license for 36 months. Ms. Taylor has since completed that 36 months. The evidence testimony will show that. However, Ms. Taylor does carry the burden today to convince this board whether or not those conditions should be removed.
All right, thank you, council. Ms. Taylor, you may share what you have today with the board.
Yes, sir. I've attended every required AA meeting throughout this time. I've never failed a drug screen. I have missed one or two, possibly 3 times that I forgot to check in. But every time that I was required to take a drug screen, I did so, and I never failed one. I don't think I've ever missed a required AA meeting. I'm assigned to do 3 in a week. I've turned in all my medications that has been required during this time. I was blessed to not have any accidents like a broken bone or anything like that. So I never had to worry about controlled substances. I have letters that I've sent in stating character references from my charge nurses and CNO that I worked for. As far as I'm aware, I've met those requirements and stipulations that I've had since I've been on probation.
So what's your current address?
Since my divorce from my previous marriage, I have moved around a lot. But currently I live at 14807 Audubon Lake Boulevard, Gulfport, Mississippi, 39503.
Thank you. Council, do you have questions for Ms. Taylor?
Two. Ms. Taylor, relax.
Yes, ma'am.
Breathe.
Okay.
Okay, all right. I want to look at Exhibit B7.
Okay.
Would you agree with me, B7 is the final order that was entered by the board November 20th, 2017?
Yes, ma'am.
That was as a result of the board hearing that was held on June 8, 2017.
Correct.
Okay. And the board cited you at that time as you had an out-of-state action and some issues with Louisiana. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On your renewal application with Mississippi, when you are renewing your RN license, you actually said no about being disciplined by another licensing board. Would you agree?
Correct.
And the board cited you for that and listed basically that you had failed a reasonable suspicion screen and it tested positive for methamphetamine. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. The board then heard testimony and evidence in your case and basically allowed you to continue to practice as a nurse if you met certain drug-related stipulations. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe the board allowed you to have 48 months in which to complete a total of 36 months of having stipulations against your license. Is that fair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is it your testimony today that you've done everything required of you that's contained in this in order, Exhibit B7?
Yes, ma'am. I believe so.
You have submitted a primary physician practitioner.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You have submitted and received an evaluation for psychological purposes as well as a chemical dependency evaluation.
Yes, ma'am. I sent those in.
You have supplied us with employer reports as well as aftercare or counseling treatment management term reports.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You testified that you attend 2 to 3 AA meetings. Is that correct?
I attend 3 meetings per week.
Where do you attend?
Well, there's many on the Gulf Coast. What we call it's a home group. That's at the little yellow house in Ocean Springs. I do attend, I live in Lyman now, so it's quicker to just go to the Ocean Wave there in Long Beach. And then I have recently, since after the last Hurricane Ida, the first one to open up the next day, I every now and then go to 321, which is in D'Iberville.
And you have a sponsor.
Yes, ma'am.
And who does your support group consist of?
Sorry, I laugh. It's just they're not all family. Consists of my new fiance, my mother, my stepfather. So sorry, I'm getting a little choked up. My dad was one of my cheerleaders. He passed away September 6th. My stepdad, Herlin, and my sponsor. And then if you can't get somebody on the first time you try to call, you keep going till somebody answers. And some coworkers at work that I trust.
What would you consider your sobriety date?
December 5th
Of what year?
of I think it's 27. I have 4 years. As of Monday, I have 4 years.
Congratulations. Thank you. So 17.
Yes, ma'am.
And what was your drug of choice?
I used to take I used to like Adderall.
And are you currently taking any medications?
Yes.
And you've had all those approved through the compliance committee?
Yes, ma'am.
In your order, again, we're looking at Exhibit B7.
Yes,
Your
ma'am.
testimony was that you did comply with the third-party drug testing company Affinity. Is that correct?
Yes.
Ma'am.
All right. And I'm gonna pause there as we talk about the drug screens and pull out this massive exhibit, marked Exhibit B9, that was entered into evidence.
Okay.
First page, you see there, says you checked in 1,355 times.
Okay.
Yes, that sound about right?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it a habit?
Yes, ma'am. At 3 a.m. every day.
You had 11 missed check-ins, and you testified earlier, there may have been times that you did not call. It says that you selected for 66, and there was a no-show for 1. And when I looked at the no-show for 1, it was dated March 19, 2018. But you've never been cited for that, correct?
I've never been aware that I missed a drug screen. Nobody called me. Nobody sent me an email or text or anything.
Okay. And in fact, there's no information within this report regarding that screen as well. Okay. You had 2 invalid screens. And then, of course, you see here the 65 negative screens.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know what invalid means. I mean, I know what the word means, but I don't know how it pertains to this.
And it's your testimony that if we were to even test you today, would it be positive for anything?
No, would not, but I'm willing to do it.
And you've been gainfully employed since you've been under this agreement?
Yes, ma'am. Select specialty sometimes gets a bad rap. You know, it's a hard job, but they've been very faithful to me, so I've been faithful back.
What have you been doing there?
I work in a long-term acute care facility, so we have a lot of respiratory failure, hence they're on the ventilator. We do a lot of wound care, but our patients are chronically, critically ill. So what that means is they've been ill for a very long time and continue to stay that way, and the prognosis is not that great. So I'm hoping to get my nurse prac in mental health and probably start a pilot program with that company. That's what I'd like to do.
And does your employment know you're here today?
Yes, ma'am.
And they're going to continue to employ you should the board decide to lift your restrictions?
Yes, ma'am.
You submitted today for the board to review, and it's located in B8, some character statements.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you care to briefly explain to the board who wrote on your behalf and how you knew them?
Okay. The first one is Ms. Patricia Engel. I never called her that. I just called her Trish. She was a charge nurse on night shift. She would commonly ask me to help her out because I was a senior staff. The next one is Michael Davis. He was the CNO at that time. Since then, he's moved on to another facility. He was a CNO of the Select. Melissa Jenkins, she presently works day shift, but she's also a charge nurse.
Okay.
And Robin Holloman, she was a charge nurse on night shift. Jessica Mickelson, she worked, okay, so presently she's just regular staff, but she's been a charge nurse on day shift. That's how I first met her. Then she became wound care nurse. Then she was an interim CNO for a little bit. So she's kind of like, I mean, every now and then she'll do the schedule because we have when I work on our phones. So every now and then she'll help out with that and she'll be charge nurse. But since that time, her mom's gotten sick, so she's decided just to be a staff nurse at this time.
So, Ms. Taylor, you feel that you've complied with this order, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is there anything else you want to tell the board in your request?
I could tell them what I've done since this has happened.
Sure.
This microphone's funny. Okay. With the help and the nudge from the board, if you call it that, I was recommended or instructed to do these things during this time. I've gained a lot of self-confidence and self-worth. My ex-husband started to see that and took it as a threat. With recovery and the program, I've learned that I'm worth something. So I decided to get divorced. My life is completely different. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but I know I'm worth something. I know I'm valuable. I know I'm intelligent. I know I'm very capable. I do like challenges just because it's a challenge, just to see if I can do it. In one of my folders I got from the rehab center, it had a diagnosis in there, something to do with a spouse, and I really never understood it. But now I don't remember exactly what it's called, but I realized that I'm in charge of everything that I've done in my life, that I take full accountability and responsibility. And I learned that while doing this 12 steps. But I had influence, and I left him. And ever since then, I've had nothing but great blessings that have come in across to me. I just can't thank you enough for saving my life, because I don't know where I'd be if I had stayed in the place that I was at. I just want to thank you for doing your job. Thank you for looking out for the community, because I'm just very thankful, and I just really happy that my life is so different, so full of blessings. I have a reason to get up in the morning. Thank you.
One more question. And I meant to ask this when I was asking questions earlier about your sobriety date and medications. What specific medications are you taking now?
Okay. I take Cymbalta. I take Abilify. I take Enderall for when I'm at work and I get anxious. I take Visceral when I'm off and I get anxious. I take Trazodone for sleep, and I told you about the Visceral. I also tried a new drug that came out. It's called Syndexa. It's to help you. It increases your leptin production, so you feel fuller longer.
Are you getting those filled in Mississippi or another?
No, Mississippi at Walgreens.
And do you have one provider?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, all those medications came through the compliance division and committee of the board.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Any questions for Ms. Taylor from the board panel?
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
A single state license, are you only licensed?
Anything further from the board panel?
Adderall. At the time this all occurred in Louisiana, I was told by my ex-husband now weight was an issue. So I took a diet pill from my dad, such as Didrex, and that metabolizes methamphetamines. But my drug of choice was Adderall.
Anything further from the panel? Council, anything Further. Right, at this time, Ms. Taylor, if you have a closing statement, make it at this time.
I just want to thank everybody again for letting me speak and hearing me out. Thank you.
Council,
Sure. Just that the evidence and testimony presented before the panel today should be considered in light of the burden that Ms. Taylor carries. She did complete 36 months of stipulations with the board. In fact, she completed 36 plus almost 12 more, about 48 months actually of screens that she submitted. So it's up to you all, based on the evidence and testimony she provided, whether or not she's met that burden.
thank you, council.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now entertain a motion for the board to exit to executive session for deliberation on license number R 865-267. Been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The board panel will now exit to executive session for deliberation. We will return shortly with a decision. All right, we are back on the record. Thank you so much for your patience. Maintain a motion for the board panel to return to regular session.
Make a motion, we go into regular session.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Following deliberation on license number R 865267, the board panel renders the following. Removal of all stipulations and a recommendation for continued NAAA meeting weekly. Are there any questions?
So that means that I'm off probation.
You are off probation. We will get a copy of that order to you within 30 to 45 days. And you're at Audubon Lake Boulevard.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll get that mailed to that address. And any other questions? All right, congratulations.
I just want to thank you again for making me realize where I was headed. Thank you so much.